First of all, your reaction to what Amber Rudd's just said.
I was very saddened by the news yesterday evening that Amber had decided to leave government. She's a good person. She's my friend, not just my colleague. But I listened to her just now on your programme, and I have to say, whilst I respect her deeply, I don't agree with her on what I thought was her central point in her letter, which was she said that the government wasn't taking seriously the issue of getting a deal with the EU. But it was good to hear from her today that she did actually say that the Prime Minister is doing this seriously.
There is a very widespread suspicion, not just from Amber Rudd, but many other people, that really the government is not trying hard for a deal. You hear all these voices from Brussels saying, we see no new proposals, we see nothing coming forward. The two sides are diverging, not converging. To put that to rest, can you tell me now, give me one shred of a suspicion, of a whisper, of what the government's position actually is on that deal? What is the deal?
Well, first of all, I mean, that view, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Great, well, let's tell us what the deal is.
Let me tell you, from day one, from the point this new administration was formed, the central focus of the government has been to make sure that we leave the EU on October 31st. And that is, we want to have a deal. We absolutely want to have a deal.
Point. Amber Rudd said there's no evidence that the government's trying to get a deal. Give me some evidence.
Well, the evidence is that...
Give the people watching some evidence.
The Prime Minister, on day one, he set up a group of his most senior ministers, most senior advisors, that have been meeting 2 to 3 times a week, working almost exclusively on getting a deal. There's been numerous meetings in Brussels. There's been numerous bilateral meetings with the EU member states. I've had a number of meetings and discussions. The Prime Minister, for example, is going to Dublin tomorrow. There's more meetings in Brussels next week. And there has been progress.
Okay.
What has stalled this progress is what happened in Parliament last week.
Not a shred of a new idea from the British government. Nothing.
There actually are new ideas.
What?
There are many new ideas.
Tell me.
And anyone who understands how negotiation works, you would not discuss those in public and put those in the public domain. But I am absolutely clear that we are working wholeheartedly, straining every sinew to get a deal, and the Prime Minister is personally putting in all the significant effort you would expect from a leader to get this deal done, and is absolutely focused on that.
There's no evidence from the other side that anything has come through at all. Amber Rudd's just said that the Cabinet is not involved in any of this. So can I put it to you, even as Chancellor of the Exchequer, would you know what the contours of a British deal were?
Absolutely, because as I said...
So you know that there is a proposal, but you won't tell us
about
it?
Yes, I do know there's a proposal, and it'll be madness to start talking about that in public. What I do know, as being one of the senior ministers on this negotiation committee, and by the way, the reason why the Prime Minister has rightly set it up this way, we're learning from the mistakes of the past, and one of those, by the way, also is that you need to have an alternative, and that's why we are properly preparing for no deal. Yeah. But the Prime Minister set up a small group so we can move at pace and move quickly as the EU adjusts its position. And there are a number of discussions going on, and I am absolutely convinced that if we continue down this course of having these discussions, preparing for no deal, we can still get a deal. But this bill, this Benn bill from this week, has not helped. That is an attempt to kneecap the government in its negotiations, and we won't let that work. We will continue to work towards a deal.
The people on the other side of the table in Brussels or indeed in Dublin are saying again and again, there are no British proposals, there's no deal being offered to us, we must prepare and brace for no deal, because actually they suggest you're not really negotiating in good faith.
Well, look, they would say that. Anyone that has been involved in any kind of serious negotiation, they know that you have this to and fro. Matters most is what is happening in those private discussions. And I'll tell you what's been making the most difference to concentrate their minds is our preparation for no deal. We don't want no deal, but if we have to, we will leave on October the 31st with no deal. But it is that very issue, that the fact that we are willing to do that, that is focusing minds, and especially of the EU Commission, of our Irish friends, in wanting to see a deal.
With greatest respect, this is completely abstract promises and words when one side of the negotiation says there's nothing coming back at all. What about an all-Ireland backstop, for instance?
We will not support a backstop of any kind.
Not an all-Ireland one either.
The backstop is anti-democratic. And we don't need an all-Ireland backstop. We've been very clear that you can have alternative arrangements. We've been actually making some progress on our discussions about some of the things that would be the features of a alternative, such as a trusted trader scheme, perhaps exemptions for small businesses, looking at the agricultural, all Ireland agricultural economy that already exists. So we've been very constructive on this. And you know what? Let me just say this: is that what's also helped to focus on Ireland and finding an alternative to a backstop is the knowledge that if you did have no deal, since both sides are committed to no change on the border, no infrastructure, that in itself is an alternative. Isn't it better? Isn't it better to negotiate a deal and take time to set out that alternative than to suddenly find yourselves in one in 53 days' time? It's much better for all sides that we negotiate this.
All right. One of the possibilities looking ahead is an election. You've said that you hate the Benn Bill. I can understand that we dislike the Benn Bill. Can I ask you, is it at all credible the Prime Minister not to obey the rule of law? If the Benn Bill becomes law, then surely the Prime Minister has to do what it says. No ifs, no buts.
Well, this government, of course, it will obey the law. The Prime Minister's been very clear about that. He was asked about that in Parliament last week, and he was very clear. So we will obey all laws.
If the law says the Prime Minister must ask for an extension beyond October the 31st to Brussels, the Prime Minister will do that, because that's what the law says.
Well, I'll tell you what the Prime Minister is going to do, because this is very important for your listeners to hear, because it's been the big issue this week. We are going to continue to work towards exit on October the 31st. We will leave on October the 31st. We will work for a deal. We will keep putting all our effort in that and preparations for no deal, just in case that's the only way we can leave. The Prime Minister will go to the October Council meeting on October the 17th and 18th, and he will try to strike a deal. He absolutely will not ask for an extension in that meeting.
But that's the problem. If the law says that he must ask for an extension, what are his options?
Well, the law talks about October the 19th in case there is no deal agreed in that council meeting. Should we get to that position, we will look at our options. Of course, we'll obey the law, but we will look at our options, and we will not.
After that council, the Prime Minister would ask for an extension, because that is the law of this country.
We will not change our policy. Our policy
is clear. How does this work? It's completely baffling.
Well, we have to wait and see.
If the law says one thing, and you're saying the government's going to obey the law, but we're not going to do that one thing, it's very hard to see how you get out of that.
The government will not change its policy, and we will be consistent with obeying the law, but also sticking to our policy, and you'll have to wait and see how that happens. There's a lot of days between now and October the 19th, and we will be working full on until October 31st, actually, to either leave with a deal or to leave with no deal.
So the government's position is that we will obey the law, but we won't do what the law tells us to do.
Those are your words. Those are not my words. No, absolutely not. We are clear.
Well, explain what's wrong about that. Explain what's wrong about what I've just said.
Well, first of all, the Prime Minister will go to the council meeting on the 17th and 18th. He'll be trying to strike a deal. He absolutely will not be asking for an extension in that meeting. Should we, as the bill talks about the 19th being an important date, and at that point we will consider our options, but our policy is clear, it is unchanged. We will be leaving on October the 31st.
So what that means is, at that council, if you don't get a deal, and the 19th comes round, as dates tend to do, you at that point will obey the law or not?
We will obey all laws, because all governments should obey laws, absolutely. But you'll have to wait and see what happens then. But we are clear. We must, and let me just say,
let's just move on about it. We're going round in circles.
Before we do that, can I just say that this issue has divided our country for far too long. I am in a government that wants to heal society, to bring people together, and this issue of the EU, remain and leave, we can't let it continue. It's been 3 years since we had that referendum. And I talk to people all the time, like I did this weekend. People who, whether they voted leave, whether they voted remain, they want this over. They want us to exit. They see no reason for another pointless delay.
Right, I understand all of that. I still don't understand how you get out of the corner you have painted yourselves into. One way might be that the Prime Minister at that point says, well, I'm just not going to do this, and resigns as Prime Minister. Is that a possibility?
The Prime Minister will not be resigning. He will be keeping his promise, this government's promise, to leave on the 31st.
Something about this can't be true. It can't be true that you're going to obey the law, but you're not going to do what the law says, and the Prime Minister is not going to resign. I just don't see how you get out of this. I really don't. Just tell us a little bit. If you've got a cunning plan, or if Dominic Cummings has got a cunning plan, this is the moment to tell us, because I don't believe you have.
We have a plan, which is to stick to what we've been doing day in, day out since the 6 weeks ago that we came into office, which is to plan properly for no deal in case it happens, but to put a tremendous amount of effort, all the effort we can, in getting a deal. And I am very clear, in my position, sitting there as Chancellor, being able to look at across government, I can see all the work that's going into that, and I couldn't be more clear about the effort that we're putting in to try and get a deal.
Is Amber Rudd a Conservative?
Yes.
Is Ken Clarke a Conservative?
Yes.
Is Nick Soames a Conservative?
Yes.
So why have you got rid of them all? You've pushed them out of the party, taken the whip away, and they've caused enormous pain. Do you yourself feel comfortable about what's happened?
I'm sad about what's happened. I don't know a single
Would you like to see them coming
that is
back?
not sad about the way things have turned out last week. I would. I hope eventually there's some way for people to come back if that's what they wish to do. But as long as they sign up to the government's policy, and that means the government's central policy. We've already lost 2 prime ministers because of this Europe issue. And we don't want to have all this, these problems all over again. We've just been through a leadership election, and the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, couldn't be clearer on his policy. So whilst I'm sad about what's happened, he was absolutely right to make the vote last week a vote of confidence. And all MPs know what happens if you defy a vote of confidence.
His own brother doesn't trust him.
Well, his own brother, who I also have huge respect for, he's one of my ministers in one of my previous departments. He's had to make his own decision. But it is right that if you are a minister and you're not comfortable with the policy of leaving on the 31st of October, deal or no deal, then you have to make your own decisions.
We're in a strange position at the moment, because clearly your party is in terrible trouble at Westminster, what people call inside the Westminster bubble, SW1 at the moment. But out in the country, you're doing quite well in the polling, and we watch the Prime Minister charging about, and he appears to be electioneering already. There's a sense of an election starting. Now, to absolutely guarantee that you do well in that election and bring back a big pro-Brexit majority in the House of Commons, you need to do some kind of arrangement with the Brexit Party and Nigel Farage. Can I ask you if you personally would feel comfortable standing on a platform having done a deal with Nigel Farage?
Look, we're not. I mean, first of all, we absolutely now need an election. It's actually it's sad we've come to this point, because I would have liked the next election to come at the right time, but it's being forced upon us because Parliament is trying to kneecap these negotiations, and so therefore we need an election. Now, your question about electoral alliances and things, we don't need an electoral alliance with anyone. We can stand on our own 2 feet, put our message across, which is not just the message on this key issue, which is leaving the EU, no more further dither and delay, but it is also about bringing the nation together. You haven't had the opportunity to ask me about my spending round last week, which would have been, in normal circumstances, quite a moment. But I point to that because if you look at the measures about whether it's education, it's health, it's crime, these are the issues the British people also care about. But these are all the issues that bring people together. We need to heal society. We are a one-nation party. We are a proud one-nation party, and that's what we will be at an election, bringing the country together and ending this uncertainty about EU exit.
This is really, really important, because a lot of Conservatives looking at the government at the moment say this is no longer quite the Conservative Party that I recognise. This is more like a vote leave campaign in Number 10. That's what you're now serving. That's what it's become. You're offering almost nothing at all for the 48%. And now it's clear there's going to have to be some kind of arrangement or compact with Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party. I know Boris Johnson has said privately it won't happen. Can you say publicly now there will be no pact, no deal, no alliance with Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party?
Look, we don't need an alliance with anyone. But let me also the
I want you to rule it out.
The point that you've made there about the picture, I think you could say our opponents are painting of us, and of course they would paint a false picture.
These are Conservatives.
We are a proud centre-right, moderate, one-nation party. There is nothing extremist about wanting to meet the will of the British people on a simple question, which was, do you want to leave the EU or not. People want that honoured. There's nothing extremist about that.
That's all
and
fine.
we are a party that is committed to everyone in our society about healing the wounds, and that is what you will see from this government.
I'm asking you one question really here. Can you rule out an agreement with the Brexit Party, yes or no?
Look, we're not in an election yet. When we get there, I'm clear that we don't need an alliance with anyone. I think our message will resonate across the country. You already pointed out that out there, when you get away from Westminster, which often can give you a very false picture of what real people think, our true masters, the British people, it is clear that they want this uncertainty ended, and they also like all the other things that we've been talking about keeping the economy strong
you can't really
and investing in our public services.
You can't say, I, Sajid Javid, Chancellor of the Exchequer, rule out an agreement between the Conservative Party and the Brexit Party at the next election.
I'm telling you, we don't need an alliance with anyone.
Don't need is not the same as ruling it out.
We don't need it.